yeah, I know I'm gon' fuck. Wanna go to war, gotta send out a slug. Nigga out let nigga spraying up the car. Mine on.
Oftentimes as a producer, you're gonna come across beat block, and you know, it's not gonna be nice, but it's something which is completely normal, and everybody as a producer deals with it. A lot of people would usually, you know, be like, oh, I have beat block right now, I don't want to make anything, I'm just, you know, go get inspired, whatever. But from my personal experience, like throughout the 4 years that I've been producing, if there's something which I know, is the fact that you should really try to push through the whole beat block thing. And in my case, every single time I've done my best work whenever I had beat block, pretty much half the placements which I have were made during a beat block period. Now, if you ask me, you should keep working throughout this. And today, in this video, I'm gonna be showing you 3 of the things which helped me push through this whole period, and how you can apply these things and, you know, just make the best work. Now, whenever I have beat block, and the first tip which I can give you is just stick to what works. Maybe it's gonna be a chord progression which you know well, maybe it's gonna be a scale which you're comfortable working with, maybe it's gonna be a plugin, a go-to VST, like a certain sound. It doesn't matter, like just pick something which you're comfortable with just using and you know it very well. The second thing is gonna be, and that's probably the whole point of the video, but you should be keeping things very simple. Now, why do I say this? The whole reason why you should be keeping things simple is oftentimes beat block happens because maybe you have an amazing idea, but the skill just isn't there. Like, especially if you're a new producer, oftentimes like we just have these crazy ideas, but we don't have the skills to, you know, materialize it into an actual product in the real life. So by pulling back and, you know, just taking a step back, laying down the foundation of the basic stuff, it's gonna help you build more complicated stuff, and you know, it's just gonna help you execute the idea that you have. But first you gotta start from the basics. Just keep everything simple and, you know, just keep on building on top of the idea. And my third tip is you should always let the technology do the work. Now, I'm not gonna say like let AI generate beats for you or any of that stuff. And of course, I also like strongly recommend learning actual instruments, learning how to sing, music theory, like anything that's gonna help you become a better producer. But in some cases, it's okay to, for example, pull up Arcade, use phrases from different phrase packs, use splice. It doesn't matter how you create it, like as long as you're making something yourself and it's your idea, it's fine. But just don't fall into the habit of, you know, just being a lazy producer. Now, I myself am currently in a little bit of a period where, you know, just ideas aren't coming to me, and I wanted to make a cool video for you guys, but I just couldn't come up with anything to break down. So in this video, I actually made a beat like which perfectly applies all of these tips. So like usual, I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna break down all the things, and I'm gonna show you how I apply the advice that I just gave you. So without too much talk, let's get into it. Okay, so this is pretty much the sample part of the beat. You might see, like, first thing right off the bat, I have 4 layers, or you know, just 4 different types of layers. The piano, which is gonna be the basic, most essential part of the whole melody. I have an accent, then I have a vocal part, and then I have bass for the low end. So sticking to what you know, starting off with the first layer, open up Web's piano. It's a piano which I love using, like I know it pretty well, I know how to manipulate it, and I lay down this pattern. Keeping it simple, right? Like, I'm sticking to something which is very simple. We just have a 2-chord progression, and it's a chord progression which I'm very familiar with, so you know, I'm used to using it. And basically it's a 1/6 chord progression. So we have a C sharp minor chord which goes into an A major chord. And what I've done here is basically I just took the thirds of each chord and I pitched them up an octave, and then I just add these little notes which are basically notes from the scale. Now, as far as effects go, all I'm doing is just tapering a little bit of the high end off, and then I'm cutting out the low end. Right after that, I wanted to saturate the piano a little bit, so I added effect rack, and I'm using this radiator mixer preamp. And right after that, I have this micro shift, which just basically softens the sound a little bit, spreads it a little bit. It's kind of like a chorus. Then I have the Fruity Stereo Shaper, you know, just spreading the sound, making it more wide. And finally, I have this Valhalla Vintage Reverb. what I've done next was basically I just took the piano, I exported it to an audio file, and then just by using two effects, I turned it into something which is like an ambience layer, just filling out the frequencies. So first off, I have this EQ, which obviously is taking out the low end, and it's completely taking out the high mids, so it's very ambient. And then I have even more stereo separation, and it sounds like this. Moving on to the accent part, I wanted something to accent, like just add a little bit more texture and more ear candy to the whole sample. So I added this violin accent. And for this I'm using Chris Hines Ensemble Contact Bank. This is what it sounds without any effects, just two simple notes. To get this ambient sound, I added a couple of effects. So starting off, we have this fruity fast distortion. Then of course we have this EQ, which again is just cutting out all of the high end and is just making it as ambient as possible. Then we have a big Valhalla vintage reverb, almost 100%. Finally, like always, we just want to make the sound a little bit more wide, so we have the stereo shaper, and we're keeping all the effects consistent throughout every single layer. And by doing this is just helping us expand and just lay a canvas on which we can add even more better ideas on top. For the next part, I wanted to add some vocals. Again, we're just letting the technology do all the hard work. So all I did was I pulled up Arcade, and I'm just using this vocal phrase from the Darkness Inside preset. And again, it's just two notes, two simple phrases. Essentially, we're just creating a call and response with this vocal, so it's a little bit more catchy. For effects, since we wanted to keep everything more ambient, since that's the whole point of the sample, like just an ambient piano melodic vocal sample, I started off with Cymatic's Origin, and I'm basically just cutting out all of the high-end Valhalla vintage reverb. I added a stereo shaper and this pancake, which is just adding more movement to the whole vocal. But since this wasn't enough, I kind of felt like adding even more ambience to the background and just another vocal. Now, I couldn't find any good vocal for this in Arcade, so I had to pull up Contact. And today I was just scrolling on TikTok, and these videos where they show famous presets, and I came across the preset which was used in Wolves by Kanye West. They used this Contact Bank, which is called Voice of Rapture, the soprano. So I just kind of took inspiration from this, and I laid down this melodic pattern, like it's just random notes which just sounded good. Now once again, to make this as ambient as possible, as a background vocal, I added these two EQs. Now the first one is, again, just taking out all of the high end, and since the vocal had a lot of jumpy frequencies which were very sharp and just clashing, I added the second EQ, and as you can see, like I'm just cutting out everything that's sticking out and it's just harsh. Once again, I added this Valhalla vintage reverb, and I added this pancake, which again is just panning the vocal going from left to right. And then I'm applying this technique which I showed in my previous video, but basically I wanted the vocal to be more thick without just layering it. So what I do is I use Echo Boy, you can use any delay, and I'm setting a very tight delay, and basically that's just like doubling the signal, and it's just making it more thick for some additional textures. What I did was I added this free delay, and basically with the ping pong setting on, it's just gonna be bouncing around from one ear to the other, and it's kind of like a little ear candy texture. Now finally, the low end, and like every single video of mine, like this has become a meme, but I'm using Flicks, the flat wound edgy preset, just to add a little clean bass. And I have this Guitar Rig 6 with the preamp using the Basic Bass Pro preset, and I'm cutting off all the high end off the bass, you know, just cutting out all the sliding notes, all the frequencies from the fingers. So with all that being said, this is how the final sample sounds like. I didn't like how it was very muddy, so what I did was basically I just pitched up the whole sample, and I opened up elastic pitch, and I'm just pitching it up 3 semitones up. So we're just going from C sharp minor all the way up to E minor. But once I add the vocals and we move on to the drums part, I'm actually pitching up even more just to match the acapella. Okay, so now moving on to the drum part of the whole beat, I started another FOP. Here we have the sample, once again pitching it up 2 semitones, so now we went from E minor all the way up to F sharp minor, you know, just as I said, to match the acapella. And when it comes to the drums, I'm using all the sounds from my drum kits. They're free, you can go get them from the description. Once you have a lot going on, like melodies, vocals, all that stuff, you want to keep the drums as basic as possible just so the artist can flow a little bit better. As far as the hi-hat goes, I just have a 2-step hi-hat, basic snare pattern. I just have this counter snare. I have this reversed open hat, which is just reversing into the snare, and then I have the kick, which is once again extremely simple. And now, like always, let's hear the sample with the drums and the acapella and see how it will sound if it was an actual song.
Living carrots, that's a Bugatti. I dropped $1 million in my ear. My bitch fucking on a boss that made her pussy top tier. Ain't no love, ain't no love, it ain't no. Ain't no love, ain't no love, it ain't no. Ain't no love, ain't no love, it ain't no. Ain't no love, ain't no love, it ain't no. Hustle on Front Street down the plug. Stepping in Ricky, I know I'm gon' fuck. Wanna go to war, gotta send out a slug. Nigga caught lat, nigga spraying up the car. Mine on point, nigga got stay geek. 75 carats, that ain't no compete. Elliot take out $1 million receipts. Send out an invoice and sweeping your street.